only white people were beautiful. Only straight hair, light eyes, light skin was beautiful. And so black women would try everything they could, straighten their hair, lighten their skin to look as much like white women. So this has changed because black people are aware. And white people are aware of it too because white people now want natural wigs. They want wigs like this. Dig it? Isn't it beautiful? All right.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Dr. Soul Brother here again with some remedies to help cure you of your ill. I want to get straight down to the nitty gritty on this here episode. Fam, we got problems. We got several problems, and we got to fix this. Let me be clear, regardless as to uh, what you may think of Vice President Kamala Harris or anybody who comes out of a background like hers. What this whole brouhaha has done, it has helped to expose some real ugliness that exists among us. That excerpt I just played was from 1968. It was a documentary dealing with the Black Panther Party, and you had a lady by the name of Kathleen Cleaver, who was the wife, the then wife of the Black Panther Party member Eldridge Cleaver, and she was talking about uh, the attitude and outlook of folk, black men in particular, who judged black women by the standards of white women, and how things were changing by the 1960s. This is against the backdrop of Black is Beautiful. And if you look at that documentary, if you see that excerpt, you will recognize that of all the women who were standing around her, she was the lightest of all of them. Just a second. And she was acknowledging that black is beautiful. One of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is this. I hope and pray to God that we eventually, sooner than later, put this whole color issue to rest because it's gotten really old and tired. It really has. Um, you know, for us to act like we're not aware of or familiar with people in our families who fit the description of, say, somebody who looks like a Kamala Harris or a what's her name there, Nicole Hannah Jones or Angela Rye, and folks of that ilk, or folks who um, look like that physically, I should say, is beyond ridiculous. Not only is it ridiculous, it's downright dishonest. And Dr. Soul Brother has a real problem with that. Real problem with that. Um, what are we ultimately saying about the people in our family who fit the profile, physical profile? Okay, you have to ask yourself that question. I have researched in my own family, maternal and paternal, and I've looked at, and I know for a fact that while I'm a dark skinned black man, I have people in my family who are of a lighter hue, and it goes back in my lineage. But as I was researching my family tree, it occurred to me that I don't see photographs of everybody. You see names, of course, 1900 census, 1910 census, like that, 1920 even. And you'll see sometimes a certain person or certain people will be referred to as mulatto, was the old school term, meaning somebody who was mixed race. It was brought to my attention that though you might see that on the census, that may or may not be true. Sometimes the census person, I'm going somewhere with this, but sometimes the census person comes to the door back in those days, looking at the person who's light skinned and automatically assume that this person was of mixed race, or as they called them mulatto back in the day. Well, that may or may not have been true. But let's just go with that for a second. Let's say you have somebody in the family who, let's say, who's of mixed race, who is like that. And then here we are in this day and time, and we're throwing shade on folk, who come out of a background like a Nicole Hannah Jones, or again, you don't even necessarily have to be of mixed race parentage. You could be just light skinned like an Angela Rye or something like that. What are we ultimately saying about the people in our lineage? What are we ultimately saying about them? Hmm? Folk you've never seen because they were on the scene before you were thought of in your parents' minds, and certainly before you were born. What are we ultimately saying? See, these are questions we need to start raising. And not only that, here's the other thing that gets me. Some of y'all out there, and you know who you are. You do one or two things. You'll make comments like, "What's her name? The ballerina girl, Misty Copeland." And somebody had the nerve to say to me, "Well, I don't consider her black." And then in the next breath, Colin Kaepernick is black. Wait a minute, hold up. Kaepernick is of mixed parentage. So Misty Copeland is not black in your mind because you don't like her. Kaepernick is black because you like and respect him. Kamala Harris is not black because you don't like her. Uh, this other person over here is black because you like them. And see, it's mostly the female with this issue. There's an episode of Phil Donahue's show where they were dealing with the issue of colorism back in 1988. So this is going back a minute. And one of the things, while it was good that they had an all black audience and they had this dialogue between the people on the panel and the people in the audience. The thing that was bothering me was this: there was reference made to the sororities and fraternities, black fraternities and sororities, and it was brought up more than once about Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated having a color issue, and rejecting those who are of a darker hue, and how historically they've rejected those of a dark hue. Let me say this in response to that, and this is the part that troubled me. While there's kernels of truth in it, it ain't the whole truth. By that I mean, depending on what part of the country you were and the chapter, you would have that. Now, clearly to their shame, because it never should have been, the whole brown paper bag test and all that other kind of crap. That shouldn't have been. And to their shame, that was happening. That said, even back in the day, way back in the day, in the 30s and the 40s and whatnot, there's photographic evidence to contradict this narrative. Now, while this episode of Donahue came on the scene, the book The Divine Nine by Lawrence Ross wasn't out yet. Nevertheless, there was photographic evidence back in the day that contradict that narrative. Lawrence Ross in his book The Divine Nine, which may have been one of the first, if not the first, book dealing with uh, the history of black fraternities and sororities, addressed that. Well, I shouldn't say address that. Let me back up. Not I shouldn't say address that. It didn't address it. But what it shows when you go through the book, photographs of all the black fraternities and sororities. And that narrative that they rejected folks who were darker is not true. It's not altogether true. Photographs going back to the 30s and the 40s and whatnot. You saw sisters of all colors in there. And look at it right now. Who was the president or the basilisk of, come on, K's, come on, all y'all AKs out in the clouds. Speak up. This is Dr. Soul Brothers call to my K sisters. Come on out now. Come on out. Look at when Vice President Kamala Harris, I believe it was last year, spoke at the um what do you call it? The convention. And who was she up there with? Dr. Glenda Glover, who was the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, as well as she was the president of Tennessee State University. What do you see on the stage? You're looking at a very light skinned black woman, Kamala Harris, and a very dark skinned black woman, Glenda Glover. That represents black is beautiful. Okay? In many ways, you saw that's what um, uh, Kathleen Cleaver and those other sisters who represent the Panther Party represented. And here's the other thing with this: it's my understanding Now I've got to talk to these women who are in their 70s and 80s for just a moment. This this has nothing to do with AKs or any other sorority. Because I'm just talking, and whether you are no K, meaning you are not even in a sorority. I'm gonna deal with those women who are in the clouds, who are in their 70s and 80s. In the 1960s, particularly in the late 1960s, when you had these black student unions popping up, it's my understanding that you had black women who are of a lighter hue who were trying to become members of black student unions on college campuses. And I'm not going to sit here and say it happened every time, but in a lot of cases, they got rejected because they were looked upon as suspect and all of that. Here's the problem: that was only reserved for those of a lighter hue who were black women. The males, that didn't seem to be an issue. So, in other words, if you say you look like Smokey Robinson and you were trying to get in the Black Student Union, it wasn't nobody tripping. But if you were looking like Erica Huggins, there became a problem. That is an issue with me. Why? The main reason why it's an issue is because we're talking the late 1960s. Fast forward to now. Those same women in those organizations who had that kind of jacked up outlook, they helped to give birth to these younger women out here acting a fool. Be that their daughters, in some cases by extension, granddaughters. So you pass down a virus to a younger generation. That's what you did. Remember, I keep telling you and your reckless mouth. You did that. This is what is giving birth to. So when you have somebody, and the thing that's cold is that yes, we know that there are those who walk around and think they're all that in a bowl of grits, but here's the deal. Here's what's so ironic. Um, Truth be told, most of the men, and when I say what I'm about to say, I'm not overlooking black men of a darker hue with this. However, however, the record shows us what? Most of the black men who are of a lighter hue, whether they're just light skinned and got two black parents, or whether they are of mixed parentage, for the most part, while there are exceptions, generally speaking, he's not checking for you, dark skinned sister. And those who are, they are in the minority. Dwayne Wickman of USA Today, he's a retired journalist. His wife is dark skinned. Ed Gordon, who used to be on BET, his wife is dark skinned. Malcolm X, who affectionately referred to his wife, Betty Shabazz, as Apple Brown Sugar. He is the exception. He is not the rule. And while I'm on Brother Malcolm X, let me mention this. If any of you know anything about his life story, including his autobiography, you know that his wife, Sister Louise Little, was a light skinned black woman as the result of being of mixed parentage, white daddy, black mother. She hooked up, according to Malcolm X and his oldest brother, Wilfred Little, said what? Her motivation for hooking up with their father, Reverend Earl Little, is because he was dark skinned and she wanted to, her children to be of a darker hue. Now, you know, of all the children, the lightest one was little Malcolm Little, who came known as Malcolm X. But that was her motivation. Now, I'm going to ask y'all a question. Actually, two questions. One, was she wrong for that? Was she wrong for that? And number two, you know people in your family, including whether it's your parents, grandparents, aunt, uncle, etc., where you have that. One spouse is of a lighter hue, the other one is of a darker hue. And for you to go in on that, you are going in on your own line. And I'm telling you right now, keep on doing that here, and you would have cursed yourself. In fact, one could argue you've already cursed yourself with that madness. And the other part is this. Um, if you want to go in on black men for gravitating, or rather, uh, um, uh, light skinned black women for gravitating towards dark skinned black men, that's a problem. What are you ultimately saying? Look in the mirror. Look in your own family. Are you going to condemn if you trace your family tree, or if you're already aware of this by way of photographic evidence? Are you going to condemn them? Look at Mrs. Coretta Scott King. Have any of y'all ever seen what her parents look like? I have. I recently discovered this. Not that I was looking for it, but I recently discovered this. See, by looking at her, we'd automatically assume, well, she come from a light skinned family. Well, come to find out, yeah, her mama was light skinned, but the daddy was a dark skinned brother. Okay? Look at Huey P. Newton, light skinned black man, dark skinned mother. And his daddy was light skinned as a result of a uh, uh, being mixed race, white daddy, black mother. And his father had a militant streak in him. Hmm? That would explain his son, Huey P. Newton. What are we saying? Look at Nicole Hannah Jones. Now, in her case, she's the product of an interracial marriage. Black father, white mother. And you look at Nicole Hannah Jones, she's clear what side of the fence she's on. She's married to a black man and produced a black child and lives in a black neighborhood. So, to all you so called swirlers out there, yeah, I'm talking to you, specifically those of you of a darker hue. You want to call yourself a so called pro black swirler? You are a walking paradox. And for you to throw shade on those sisters who are light skinned, whether they are mixed parentage or not, you are revealing a lot. And you know what you're revealing? You are revealing your hatred towards them. And your motivation behind your hatred is that you don't look like them. That's the motivation. And for you brothers out here, don't listen to these broads, man. Don't listen to them. They know what they are doing, and it's evil. Straight up evil. I'll tell you straight like that. Evil. So you who act like that and have this double standard, you need to be stretched out on a therapist couch for real, for real. You need to get it together. And you need to get it together quick before we have to exercise you because you represent a virus among us, a straight up virus. No, you need help. You need serious, serious help. So, all that was happening in the 1960s were people who were gravitating or embracing, I should say, their blackness, irrespective of skin tone. And those black folk who were of a lighter hue were embracing and taking pride in their blackness. You have a problem with that? You've got to be crazy. You've got to be nuts. Something is seriously wrong with you upstairs. No, no, it's something else going on here. No, you need psychological evaluation because you are a problem. And I'm telling you right now, in this stage, we cannot afford this. We cannot afford you. We cannot. No, you're a problem. You are a straight up problem. We can't have it and we won't have it. This is destructive and divisive. And you're playing right into the hands of these white folks who love for black folks to be divided. They love for us to be divided. And oh no, no. So what you're saying is, oh no, they're not black. They're not black. They're the other. Put them in the other category. Or why do we have to claim them? All that kind of stuff. Well, the question you have to ask is this: who gave you remember from the movie Soldier Store with Howard Ross? Who gave you the right to judge, to decide who is fit to be a Negro and who is not? The problem has been and continues to be. In fact, it's worse now, I think, than ever. We are always looking for the nearest exit door out of blackness. That is your motivation for those of y'all who produce these mixed race children. That is your exit door out of blackness. In other words, you know, this is hard, man. I'm in this uniform, this black uniform. I'm tired of this. I don't want to be black no more. So then you push the non-black identity with your children. No, no, they're not black. Because you know why? Because you're trying to live vicariously through them, through their non-black identity. That's what that is. That's what I mean when I say you need to be on a therapist couch for real. You got problems. And the reality is this. We don't recognize this as such, but I'm here to tell you it's a mental health issue. It is a straight up mental health issue. So we have been through this where this issue was settled back in the 60s and in the 70s. It was settled. This whole thing about whether people are light skinned and dark, we're all black. As Malcolm X said, one thing about this racist system, it makes us all one. And so I have to ask this question again. Somebody like Malcolm X's mother, who was a light skinned black woman, who gravitated toward his dark skinned father, was she wrong for that? Somebody talk to me right now. Was she wrong for that? Or any other woman who does that? Are they wrong for that? And if you think that they are wrong for that, or you just don't give a skip, no, you've got real issues. And you are bringing not only hatred towards those individuals, you are also bringing another layer of black self hatred to the table. That's what you're doing. You don't like what you see, and you are imposing or projecting, and in some cases, deflecting. No, you're a problem. You are a virus, and we cannot have this. Go back and look throughout history. Those who were the fierce, Dr. John Henry Clark pointed out brilliantly about some who were very light skinned were fierce black nationalists. In other words, he was pointing out you had some of them who were much lighter hue who were more pro black than those of a darker hue. That cannot be denied. That's real. That's real talk. So this whole thing about colorism, which underneath colorism is what as an anti-black sentiment. That's really what you're dealing with. You're pushing anti-blackness. That needs to be put in the graveyard and abolished. I'm an abolitionist. I'm about abolishing that mess, among other things. That needs to be done. So you need to check yourself. You need to do a self or personal inventory on what you're about because this is destructive. And going forward, if this continues, listen to me good now. If this continues, we will never get anywhere. Never, ever. We'll always be stuck in this rut that we're in. So no, leave that color stuff alone and feed that back to the white folks who fed us that. That is destructive and divisive, and we're not standing for it. Period. And for you to reject those individuals, even those who are on the right side of history, who are pro us, how dare you? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? So, no, you women who are in your 70s and 80s, y'all kickstarted this mess. And that's why we have the mess we have right now. And that's why the way we're going to hell in a handbasket. You kick this off. So you 70 something year old, 80 something year old women need to look yourself in the mirror. So you didn't care that J. Morris Anderson, who started the Miss Black America pageant and was very nuanced as it related to the contestants, as it related to the women who were selected as Miss Black America, even though they ran the gamut. And you began to see black women of a darker hue being represented. But at the same time, it was not exclusively dark skin, and it was a mixture of black women of all hues, which showed again nuance. You don't care about that. You don't. That's a problem. You don't care about that. What it is, this is the silent part. And I'm exposing this. What you really about is I don't want none of them yellow girls in it at all. That's what you're really doing, which means you're not really about the uh, unification of black folk. You're not. You're not. So we can say what we want to. When you see the women who pledge with Kamala Harris, and I've seen those line sisters of hers, they run the gamut. That represents Black is Beautiful. When you see Kamala Harris on stage with Dr. Glenda Glover at a AKA convention, and they're embracing each other. That's black is beautiful. That's black beauty. So unless you're a black person out of the culture, you clearly wouldn't understand this. And if you are a black person out of the culture, you should understand this. You should understand it. Let's be clear. I get it. We had these videos where they had sound, they call them soundies back in the day, back in the 30s and the 40s, and you can watch them on YouTube at your leisure, and you'll see um, these women who would be deemed as light skinned, red bone, high yellow, etc., who would be perceived as the apple of black man's eye and all that, and black women were need not apply. You had these other pageants, and even in our black publications like Ebony magazine and whatnot, and you had uh, black women, young black women who were not included, who were of a darker hue. I get all of that. That's understood. However, when you get to the point where you start causing harm because you're being irrational, this is where intervention becomes immediate. Intervention becomes immediate. So let's be clear. We are all black folk, irrespective of hue. Just remember the people in your family, be they brothers and sisters, parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, etc. We are all in the same gang, as they said in that song. I think it was in 1990. We're all, and Malcolm X said it best. One thing about this racist system, it makes us all one. So I'm gonna end it here. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, um, hit the, make sure that your comments are respectful and not nonsensical. Because if they're not, I will block you. Period. I've already had to jam some other fools coming on my channel talking crazy. And I have no problem doing that. None. I don't care who it is or who you think you are. So, still trying to work on doing a live show. Would have been back with you a few days ago, but unfortunately, I had um, a couple of deaths to deal with. So, that kind of threw things off. But I'll try to be on here more often and try to do a live show. Really want to try to do. Please, somebody show me uh, in the comment section how I can do a live show because I want to be able to engage some of y'all. That's important. These shows where I'm just me talking and it's pre-recorded, all that's well and good, but I want to be able to engage folk. So I'm gonna sign off now. And until the next time, God bless.